Good afternoon, I'm Darren Curtis. Despite today's brilliant weather across the Hunter after such a long rain period, Newcastle's Burwood Beach still remains off limits to swimmers and fishermen.
For all the news, join us tonight at 6.
Aero Pelican's departure lounge wasn't crowded with stranded passengers this morning. Advance publicity had given most travellers time to make other arrangements, either cancelling trips or travelling to Sydney by hire car and bus. But those with connecting flights did have a scramble.
I had a flight out at 11:55 from Williamtown, so when I heard it on the radio this morning I had to therefore change my plans and organise a flight from here to Sydney and then straight on to Coolangatta. So they've handled that well here for me, actually.
Yeah, I was a 5 o'clock start this morning, and we've got a very important meeting for the North West Shelf project, and of course that's a multi-billion-dollar operation, and here we're talking about a small incident in Sydney, whatever it is.
Right, you were due to be in Melbourne?
For a 10 o'clock meeting this morning.
Aero Pelican got 2 flights away before the 1 o'clock deadline. Airline General Manager Trevor England said the Sydney dispute was hitting regional operators hard.
Well, this morning I would estimate that we've lost something in the vicinity of $5,500 to $6,000. We've had to cancel 4 or 5 flights, and that affected about 120 odd people.
Not all flights from Newcastle were delayed. Aquatic Airways continued to operate unaffected. They have their own landing strip in Sydney on the untroubled waters of Rose Bay.
Mr Travis was addressing a news conference which completed a series of briefings by the consortium to announce its intentions to all facets of Newcastle industry and commerce. Gavenge grew out of the demise of the State dockyard and the desire by the large companies to take over some of the heavy engineering work. It was given further impetus with the naval submarine contract, which has since gone to Adelaide, but now the Anzac frigate project has brought on rapid development. Gavenge has agreements with both the local AWS and Melbourne's Amacon groups to share the old State dockyard and participate in major subcontracting work. But in a broader sense, using the dyke end of the dockyard site would permit Gavenge to enter markets for condensers, shipbuilding, conversion and repair, offshore platforms and other heavy engineering.
The 3 companies are very complementary in their engineering skills and expertise, and what we are trying to do is to take those and add greater than what exists amongst them, so that we can bid for projects which none of the partners individually would go for.
Another major scheme already put forward by Gavenge is the electrification of the rail line in the valley, even financing the $350 million project itself and recovering its costs later.
Obviously, Glenelg is most interested in rolling stock, but when you combine the resources of Varley with its consulting engineering capability, Allco with its ability to do erections and of transmission lines, etc., and Glenelg with its rolling stock, you suddenly broaden the scope to a much wider framework, the total project, which we can't do at the moment.
And Clem Varley says grouping the large firms together has yet another advantage. They would encourage each other to bigger and better.
Newcastle perhaps hasn't taken full advantage of the great industrial might that it's got. And since we've been discussing this Gavenge proposal now for some 3 years, it's amazing the way we have been taking the blinkers off. I think we can do a great thing for Newcastle industry in total. Not only from our own company's point of view, we have a substantial array of subcontractors, and I'm sure that we can pull all of those people along with us.
Understandably, the frigate project is the big one of the moment, and it would appear Gavenge can't lose, because either AWS or Amacon must win, and the consortium says it has agreements with each.
Roads across the entire Hunter region are still bearing the scars from the Easter rains. Acting Chief Engineer at Port Stephens Shire Council, Jerry Fenning, says potholes cannot be prevented from forming on many of the area's older roads.
Basically, in layman's terms, I suppose you'd get the underlying strata is weaker than the road surface, water gets into it and it slowly compacts, and as such, with it compacting, the road surface then goes down, the road surface itself then cracks and a pothole is formed as the surface starts to be pulled out by tyres on the road.
The monetary side of potholes is becoming an increasing strain on council budgets. Gosford Council is facing a repair bill of $360,000, while Maitland Council has already used $115,000 on patching their potholed roads. Mr Fenning says the cost of repairing the roads at Port Stephens has already made quite a hole in his shire's purse.
For the first 2 weeks after it, we would have spent of the order of $20,000 to $24,000 a week purely on pothole patching alone.
Mr Fenning says although the work is a necessity, they must be careful not to overstep the road maintenance budget or other projects will suffer.
We'd have to ensure that we don't go over it, and it would mean that we'd lose out on other works that we had planned to do as a result of it.
With Newcastle receiving 30% of its average annual rainfall already for the first 3 months of the year, the remaining 263 days for 1989 do not look good for the area's roads. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
Worried staff and parents fear the leaking PCBs in 3 adjacent classrooms in the old section of the school could be responsible for an unusually high incidence of headaches amongst pupils. A classroom evacuated yesterday had its lights changed today, but the teacher claims she has been ill since noticing a smell like burning toffee in the room on Tuesday.
This year in particular, there's been a lot of occurrences of headaches with the children, anything up to 6 children of an afternoon complaining. I've also had headaches, and I've begun since Tuesday afternoon with a sore throat.
And I understand that you've had problems with your tongue as well.
Yes, it's coated at the moment very thickly with a green film.
Angry parents claim that following the first 2 leaks, only a visual check was made by the Public Works Department, leaving lights containing PCBs to leak again.
Most of us have taken our children home. We're not going to let them sit in these classrooms. We don't know what the long-term effect is, and we're really worried.
They fear these leaks could be just the start of discharges in other classrooms. Teacher Mark Toohey checked his classroom lights after the first leak and discovered a yellow substance spilling onto the floor.
All the staff here are very upset about what's happened, and the fact that we've been in the rooms as well as the kids all this time, and no one seems to know what sort of effect in the future it's going to have.
Today, Area Director of Education Alan Beard was grilled by parents before speaking to teachers.
Well, certainly they feel very tentative about the whole situation at the moment, and if the indications are there, well then certainly I'll replace all of the capacitors. I want them to feel confident about their school. I think that in the meantime an appropriate response may be to leave the lights off while we examine them, so that there's no worry about any liquid vaporising. That seems to be the main worry.
He says lights containing PCBs will only be changed if there is an indication of leakage, and said the school will be back to normal in a few days' time. Other discharges have occurred at other schools in the Hunter, though he says in no other areas of the state.
The extent of Cessnock's road problems were clearly made during the inquiry. Today they were put in financial terms, as the council presented a summary of funds needed to bring Cessnock's roads up to standard. For urban and rural main roads and bridges, council says more than $56 million would be needed, while another $58 million would be required for urban and rural local roads and bridges. Under the present level of funding by the Road Traffic Authority, council says it would take 15 years to upgrade the roads. The council says funding is inadequate, but Mayor Marie Callaghan expects some good will come from the inquiry.
Well, I would like to think some positives will flow, that there will be more road funding given to council and that the federal government revenue sharing grants may be increased.
Alderman Callaghan believes there is no possibility council will be sacked as a result of the inquiry, but she expects recommendations will be made for council to do more with local roads. She doesn't want to increase rates, and more government funding or taxing trucks may be alternatives. This week's inquiry was to examine the capacity of local government services in Cessnock to meet rapidly changing social and economic circumstances. Alderman Callaghan believes council is ready for change. However, despite the construction of the F3 freeway and the Commissioner's questions regarding real estate prices, Cessnock's tourism potential and road capacity, the Mayor doesn't envisage Cessnock becoming a commutable satellite city to Sydney.
I'm sure it will not be. There's no chance whatsoever, and I'm aware that the Lord Mayor of Newcastle was recently speaking of a satellite city along Minmi or Wall's End. It certainly won't be Cessnock.
Why don't you think that would be the case?
Because there's so much area between Sydney, along the freeway before you get to Cessnock. And quite frankly, we don't want to be a satellite city.
In presenting Council's final submission to the inquiry, Town Clerk John McGann said there have been benefits, including greater public awareness of problems facing Council and of the fact that if funding isn't available externally, increased rates may be the only major avenue of funds to address local needs. Coinciding with the inquiry, members of the Municipal Employers Union involved in the recent garbage dispute staged a one-day strike. Having returned to work, they claim they're frustrated with negotiations to resolve the dispute.
And we rang Sydney yesterday, and the new draft for our new industrial agreement has been bypassed us and sent to head office in Sydney.
And what's wrong with that?
Well, we believe that the initial outlay should have been that we negotiate at a local level.
But having sent the proposed new industrial agreement to the union's head office in Sydney, Council says it's not to blame for the delay in negotiation.
The union has done nothing about it. We've done our part.
After months of legal argument and court appearances, exciting young fullback Tony Kemp has finally been cleared to play with the Knights. Kemp has signed a 5-year contract with the Knights, and he's delighted that he can finally get back on the paddock.
I'm very happy that all this controversy is over, and now looking forward to the rest of the 89 season.
Kemp flew out this morning with the team for the clash against the Brisbane Broncos, and coach Alan McMahon has named him as a fresh reserve for first grade. But there will be a big question about his lack of match fitness.
Well, there isn't any there at the moment, and there's nothing that substitutes match fitness, so the next couple of weeks are going to be vital for me to pick my fitness up to that standard that we have in first grade.
Hard-running second rower David Thorne is out of the side, leaving coach Alan McMahon with the job of rearranging his side to counter the talents of Wally Lewis, Alan Langer and Gene Miles.
You know, they're great players. They've all played for Australia on a number of occasions, and some of them have been the dominant force in the Australian sides and Queensland source for a number of years, with Alan Langer with his future in front of him. You know, he's a great player. He's very sharp around that scrum base. He could be a problem in that area. We're going to take a little bit of insurance out against that, and you know, I think it's going to be a great game. It's certainly going to be a hard game. It's one of the nights I'm looking forward to, and the intensity towards the game of the players, I'm sure that we will certainly give it a shake.
And for the Knights tomorrow, Mike McKinnon will partner Sam Stewart in the second row, Robbie McCormack will move from the centres to lock to help control Langer, and Jeff Doyle will come into the centres after being out through injury. James Goulding and Tony Kemp are the fresh reserves. At 21 years of age, Kevin Schell is set to cut the ties with the old dart and create mayhem on the playing fields of the State League Down Under. Recruited from the Scottish Second Division team Berwick Rangers, Schell hopes to make a new life in Australia and is very happy with his new home in Newcastle. With the weather playing havoc with football in recent weeks, Schell is keen to demonstrate his skills to his new clubmates and administrators.
Where's your main strengths? Probably the passing of the ball and getting into forward positions, you know. But obviously, once I've played a couple of games, and then I can start to perform how I should. Obviously, the first few games, I'm sort of just getting into the way of the play out here, you know.
Usually one of the hardest things to cope with at a new club is fitting in, but this hasn't been a problem at Australs.
Great, really mixing them with them well, you know, because I mean,
Probably when I first came out I was a bit optimistic because what would happen and that, but I've fitted in quite well and they're a good bunch of lads.
Even with the ordinary start to the season, the young Englishman is still confident that Australs will be there at the business end of the season.
No, I'm confident we'll be in the playoffs at the end of the year because, I mean, you've got to look that way, haven't you, really? I mean, it's just it's a case of the players having to get used to sort of me coming into the team as well as me sort of getting to learn how they play as well. So he's had a few changes in that in the team, but I'm sure he'll sort things out.
And how does he get on with his new Scottish coach, Willie Gallagher?
I can understand him speaking.
29-year-old Rua Rapia appeared in court charged with assault and robbery whilst armed and with having goods in custody.
Police prosecutor Sergeant Terry Gannon asked Magistrate Kel Clark to consider particularly stringent bail conditions, alleging Rapia is a senior sergeant in arms with the Bandidos motorcycle gang, infamous for its involvement in the Milperra massacre.
The police prosecutor also told the court police had become aware of the possibility of a further Milperra-type situation expected to take place in the Lower Hunter. It was alleged Rapia and other members of the gang went to the Henchman Motorcycle Club at Largs, where one man was seriously assaulted. Members' colours were allegedly removed along with a motorbike. Police claim they have been told the two parties in the Milperra massacre, the Bandidos and the Comancheros, have been directed by a council of all New South Wales bike gangs to be totally separated. The court was told the Comancheros were directed to move to an area north of Wyong, and police believe they have taken up residence in the Belmont Blacksmiths area. It's claimed the Bandidos were instructed to move south of Sydney. But the police prosecutor alleged on the day Rapia was apprehended, a large number of Bandidos were in the Hunter Valley, known to be meeting at East Gresford. The court was told police had extreme fears of what the consequences would be. But bearing in mind Rapia's position in the hierarchy of the gang, an inflammable situation may have been diffused. The solicitor representing Rapia, Warwick Hill, told the court the prosecutor's claims were pure supposition. After being granted $5,000 conditional bail, with another $5,000 surety, Rapia was taken to the Maitland police station, where he was held until bail conditions were met. Rapia was also released on the condition he would not approach the alleged assault victim or any person known to him to be a member of the Henchmen, Gladiators or Comancheros motorcycle clubs. He was also ordered not to be in the Port Stephens or Dungog Shires or the cities of Maitland or Greater Cessnock, except for the purpose of attending court hearings.
The matter has now been adjourned until May the 26th, when Rapia will again appear at the Maitland Local Court. Belinda Borissow, NBN News.
At South Newcastle Leagues Club today, the president of the Lions, John Fleming, and Ray Knight of Carpet City announced their continued commitment to the Newcastle Rugby League premiers of 1988. Along with this announcement, other sponsors were named for the individual players, adding to South's rise from the obscurity of a few years ago. But it's on the paddock that the performance of the Lions will be judged, and so far in '89, South are without a win after 2 matches.
The only problem we've got at the moment, we just seem to be doing the basic fundamentals wrong. I just think we'll just go back and work on them, and I'm pretty sure that we should come up with a victory shortly, because the odds says that we've got to win one shortly.
With the return of its representative players and 5'8" Tim Butler from Queensland, Souths will still be an enormous threat in this year's premiership.
A new funding scheme for foster parents came into force earlier this year, which they claim reduces their already low financial assistance. And they say they are already suffering from reduced services from proposed fax office closures in the Hunter. They have pleaded for contact with Minister for Family and Community Services, Virginia Chadwick, but say she has not replied.
When she was in opposition, she said that her door would always be open to foster parents and that she would have it as a high priority, or she's had it at the bottom rung of the ladder.
And some foster parents will not be able to foster any more children that they just can't afford to. You know, it's subsidising the government.
At the moment I have got a phone call into a district officer at a district centre, and I have been waiting almost 3 weeks for a reply from 2 phone calls I have made. The only type of support we do get is within our own association. Without that, I think a lot of us would have either dropped out of fostering entirely or just got ourselves into a situation where, you know, it would have just probably been as damaging to the child as the place that they had come from originally.
"39 groups of musicians and vocalists performed before a panel of judges to try and gain selection to the combined schools final in May. This rock band from Burrigal High got together only 6 days before the festival, and although the music wasn't professionally mixed, their natural talent was still able to shine through. Festival organiser Lynn Cook says this year's lineup is a breakaway from the traditional school performances of piano and guitar solos.
I think music has really changed in the high schools. I don't think, say 20 years ago, you would have ever seen a rock band, as you said, and I think there's 3 rock bands that are down to perform today. So it is very wide and varied musical styles.
Competitors came from 9 different high schools in the Lake Macquarie region, and many are already accomplished performers who regularly star in Hunter Valley senior choirs and the internationally renowned Marching Koalas. Mrs Cook says the main aim of the festival is to give all performers a chance to stage their routines in front of an audience.
It's to represent music students from ages of 12 to 18, give them an opportunity to perform for the public.
Today's winners will now be heading for Mum and Dad's garage to begin rehearsals for May's big show. Darren Curtis, NBN News.
Representatives of local commerce and industry were invited to lunch at City Hall today for the launch by the Chief Executive of the Hunter Area Health Service, Dr Owen James. Dr James told the gathering that all too frequently health services fail to intervene early enough in the community's problems, meaning they specialise in curing and not preventing.
If we had a preventative arm in health, the Salvation Army would describe it exactly. To stop a kid from getting into trouble is far better than treating him when he's in trouble.
The Salvation Army operates many services, from counselling of all kinds to feeding and housing the homeless and being on hand after tragedies and family upsets. Major Stan Hindle runs the SOS Centre in John Street, Cooks Hill, where he not only helps the homeless but also operates an emergency service. In constant touch with ambulance, police and fire services, Major Hindle is often called on to help because he's the only one some people will communicate with. Like this man who fell in the street and refused assistance from all except Stan. But even Major Hindle has his enemies.
In the highly charged areas of family breakdowns and family court and emotional areas, you can come back with threats on your own life.
And that has been the case?
Yes.
Do you take them seriously?
I do, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me in the sense that I've got to do my work as I see it. I will do the best for those kids and often the women and children who need that security and that help. When there's none available, it doesn't matter how dangerous it is, I won't discriminate.